Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Strategic Veteran, where we explore journeys of those who have served and are now making their mark in the civilian world. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today I'm honored to be joined by Darren Palatina, a former British Army Royal Engineer and Royal Navy serviceman who has seen the best and worst of military life. Darren's military career began as a way to escape a difficult environment, but what was intended to be a 4-year stint turned into a 14-year career that spanned 2 branches of the military. From serving in a bomb disposal unit in Afghanistan to building infrastructure in Oman, Darren's experiences are as varied as they are profound. His deployment to Afghanistan was particularly impactful, leaving him with long-term PTSD and depression that have shaped his post-military journey. Since leaving the service, Darren has faced challenges of transitioning to civilian life head-on, turning to entrepreneurship as a way to reclaim his life and build a future for his family. He's the founder of a design agency and is actively working towards his goals of growing his business, becoming a more consistent trader in the financial markets, and even getting back into peak physical condition to take on a Tough Mudder event. Today, we'll delve into Darren's journey, exploring the trials he's faced and the triumphs he's achieved, and learn how he embodies the values of courage, discipline, and selfless commitment in both his personal and professional life. So let's warmly welcome Darren Palatina, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Darren, brother, thank you for being our first UK guest on the show and staying up a little extra later to have a conversation with me, brother.
No, I appreciate you having me on, dude. It's been, like I said, it's been a while waiting for this one. So
I've been excited, man.
Yeah,
definitely. Dude, let's just jump right in. Let's talk about, why you joined the military and where you grew up in the UK and what life was like for you and kind of all that stuff.
Yeah. So obviously I was born UK at a town called Shrewsbury. I dotted around quite a lot because we moved. We're living in England and Wales, and we sort of got around there. And when I was 11, my mum and dad divorced. When I was 11, which then meant we lost that house. Then we relocated from the countryside, which is where we used to build tree houses, do petrol bombs, pheasant hunting, the kind of country lifestyle. And we moved into a town, and that's where the town is actually where I live now, the new town. And when I moved into that town, I got into the drug scene. Obviously, and with the band, I became a bass player in a punk band for 9 years when I was a lot younger, before the army. And that led to drugs. That led me down a very, very dark hole, close to death. I had a lot of health issues, which included like kidney issues and skin issues and all that sort of stuff. And that's kind of led me into the military. But I wanted to get out of that scene for so long, and I kept trying to pull myself out, and I kept getting pulled back in, and I had really bad, like dermatitis, like eczema on my hands, and my skin was really breaking, like bad, like I couldn't bend my fingers without my skin, really, really cracking. And I used to work, at the time I was working as a labourer on a building site, and I used to put it down to working with cement and dust and all that sort of stuff. And at the time I was really heavy on drugs, ecstasy, cocaine, speed, anything that was going. We got spiked with heroin twice, and I've done a lot. I've been around the mill. And there was a couple of weeks where I didn't take any drugs. I don't know whether we didn't go out. I don't know why, but there was a couple of weeks where I took no drugs, and my skin was starting to heal really fast. And I was like, oh, whatever. Didn't really think anything of it. And then I went out on a night out and went on the pills again, the ecstasy. And literally the next morning, my hands were back exactly as cracking, breaking. I was like, shit, man, it's the drugs. It's the drugs that's doing it. And that's when I realized if I don't stop and get out of this, like, I'm probably going to end up dead. So at this point in time, I'd been kicked out of home because I was into drugs. I know that this is like jumping around a little bit. It's a little bit confusing, but I got into drugs. My mum booted me out. Then I was living on friends' floors for quite some time, and we had the practice room where our band used to play. So I bought a sofa, like an old sofa from a charity shop. That's where I sleep in, and proper rough in it, like
typical
and then,
band life, right there.
Yeah. And then eventually I said, "Mum, I'm going to go in the army." I said, "Can I come and stay with you?" And she was living in the countryside, and it was no one around. There's no drugs. There might have been drugs, but it was very, very quiet. And there was a road. So her house was on the main road, and it was like 3/4 of a mile up a hill and 3/4 of a mile back down. There was a little junction at the top. So I just started every day running that as many times as I could to train for the army. I started hydrating those, getting my diet back on track. And, after a couple of months of not taking any drugs, I started to get quite fit. And that was when I thought, well, I'm going in. And the intention was to go in for 4 years, like you said, 4-year intention, which then ultimately led to 14-year career, So that's how I ended up going in the military, to get away from that. I know that was a long explanation.
It's good, man. No, and that's part of your story. It's what makes you who you are. And so a follow-up question to that is, why the Army? Did you look at anything else? Because you also then ended up in the Royal Navy as well. And what was your job in the Army?
So I joined as initially, when I first joined the Army, I joined the Welsh Guards, which was infantry, so just frontline, shooters. And I didn't really think about what I was joining at the time. I was just, I need to get away. I need to just get in. So when I went to the careers office, I was like, what's the fastest way in the Army? I don't care where it is, what it is. Don't care, just get me in. He said, right, within 6 weeks, you can sign up, and within 6 weeks, you go into training. Now it's for infantry. I was like, yeah, that'll do. So I didn't really think much about it. And then when I got to week 13, I tore my cartilage in my left knee in training, and that put me in holdover, to recover. And while I was there, I was like, holy shit, dude, I don't want to go infantry. Like, I'll come out with nothing. I've just, firing bullets all day, and I come out with no qualifications. Like, you can do extra quals, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was going to go in and come out with nothing. So in holdover, I decided to pull the plug, come out of training, and then rejoin the Royal Engineers, which is combat engineer.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, the British military, so combat engineers, typically you're an infantry soldier, so 14 weeks basic training. Then you go through, I think it was 9 weeks combat engineer course, which is bridging, explosives, water supply, things like scaffolding and stuff like that. And then after that, then you go on to a trade course. So it depends what trade you choose. And I chose building and structural finisher because I'd already done construction. So my trade was like plastering, tiling, glazing, spraying, and all that sort of stuff within the Army. Because the engineers go to construction tours as well. We'll talk a bit about that later with, building like RAF bases and stuff, and doing, shelters and stuff. They go to different places to construct. So that's the direction I went with the Army. The reason I chose the Army, I don't know. I didn't know much about the Navy at the time. I really didn't know about the RAF. And when you went to my careers office, it was run by mainly Army. You didn't see the Air Force and the Navy there. They were there in the background, but it's mainly the people on the front desk were Army. So when I was 17, I joined the Army when I was 22, 23. But when I was 17 and in drugs, my mum and my uncle tried to get me in the military, and I was having none of it because I was a rebel back then. I was just like, no chance. And my uncle was a submarine engineer in the Navy. So they were trying to get me in the military, and I was like, no chance. And eventually, when it got to that point, I was like, I need to get in. So that's why I chose, I went to the Army mainly because of the influence that guy at the front desk had. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And, infantry also makes sense because here it's the same way. Like, if you want to ship fast, infantry, 100%, right? It's just never not a need for infantry guys in our Army. Even I think our Marine Corps, they
to default to infantry. So
Mm.
not surprised there. I'm curious, is the Army over there, is it kind of like over here where it's by far and away the largest of the branches and then the others are kind of small hat? Is that why they were kind of in
I
the
think so.
background?
Yeah. Like I think I don't know now because they made a lot of cuts, and I don't know where the cuts were made across the three branches of the forces. But when I was in, I think it was 60,000 Army, and I think it was like, I want to say 30,000 Navy and about 15 to 20,000 Air Force, around that. I think, I don't know for sure. But the
Yeah.
Army at the time was a lot bigger. But I know when I was coming out, they were trying to cut it down to 30K. So they were trying to cut it in half.
That's the
You know,
size of one of our divisions.
I know. Yeah.
That's really putting it into perspective for me right now about how much bigger our military. I mean, and we talked offline, right? Like our country is just huge in landmass anyway, so it's just a
Yeah.
much bigger country than yours. But so how many deployments did you end up doing?
So I did Afghanistan was my main one for
Yeah.
operational deployment. Then I went like Jordan, Oman, Cyprus, couple of other places as well, but they were mainly just like training deployments. But Oman was a construction tour, so we ended up building an RAF, an Air Force base over in Oman, and we were there for, I think, 7 months. We were there for, and that was bad, man. That was like, it was like 70 degrees heat, 90% humidity. You were like, you turn up in shorts and t-shirt, and it's like within 10 minutes you were like wringing your t-shirt out. It was just horrific, especially when they finally built, when we finally got the walls up and the roof on. The humidity in each bay that you were working in, because I was a structural finisher, so I was doing like the plastering, the rendering, flooring, tiling. So I'd be in one bay for like, quite some time to get them finished. Obviously we have a team of finishers, but yeah, you'd go in there, man, it was just like, and they were ragging us like 18-hour days, and you would just fucked like big time, so.
And 70, for those of you who are listening, he is a Brit, so that's 70 Celsius, not
Yeah.
Fahrenheit, which
Yeah,
is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 110-ish, if I had to guess.
probably 110, 120, I think so.
Yeah,
Probably,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
I'd have to
plenty
Google it.
hot, is what it is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
plenty hot. So your deployment to Afghanistan, it sounds like you were a lot like what our combat engineers ended up being over there. Is basically they were just bomb detection units, is what they ended up becoming. We called them route clearance. It was always the engineers who would go out and clear the route twice, sometimes three times a day. Is that kind of what your deployment ended up being like as an engineer?
So it's important to note that so when I went out there, we were what's called an IED search team. We were part of a bomb disposal unit. So my job was to go out there with the search equipment to find the IEDs, uncover them, and then call it in, and they would come and detonate or whatever they wanted to do with it. But it's important to remember as well that although the engineers are very specialist within that role, there's a lot of what we call I think it was called all arm or all cap badge search teams or all arm search teams. So like you'd have like it could be signals, it could be logistics, it could be anything, and they'd come in and become search teams as well. And because they weren't as heavily trained as the Royal Engineers or the engineers in general, you find a lot of them guys get injured. They're the ones that typically get a lot of injuries. Like we had a lot of injuries within our team and our close teams as well, but they're normally the guys that get hurt. And like infantry tend to want to go from A to B as fast as possible. They don't care. They'll just go over any ground. But they tend to go over ground that's not likely to be laced with IEDs, because an open field is very hard to target somebody in an open field where we understand as engineers, if there's a doorway, the IED is likely to be in the doorway because you're getting channeled into that area. If there's a gap in the hedge,
for a reason.
Yeah, that's it. See, so so engineers go over there for many, many different things, and within the engineers, you've got plant operators, you've got signals, like radio operators. There's loads of different roles within the Royal Engineers. So you go over there and there's engineers doing different tasks. But before we went out to Afghan, we were asked if we would, we were told our unit was deploying as IED search teams, and they were asking for volunteers first because they didn't want to push people into something. If there was enough people who were willing to do it anyway, they didn't want to push people into that kind of role because of the dangers involved. But there was 48 of us in my squadron. And when they said who wants to volunteer for, bear in mind I do motocross, down on mountain bike, and I was an adrenaline junkie, and did drugs and all that stuff.
Of course.
Yeah. And when they said, "Oh, who wants to go and find bombs or IEDs in Afghan. I was like, fucking, I'll have some of that. So I put my hand up and I looked down the line of 48 blokes, and there's only 2 other hands, both of them downhill mountain bikers. I was like, us guys are brilliant. So that was it. We were the first ones to put our hand up, and we were like, yeah. At the time, I was single, I had no kids. If I died, it's like, whatever. It's just going to be a laugh.
Do you regret it?
No, I enjoyed it, man. Like, obviously, we'll talk about it in a bit, but I had 12 years of PTSD and depression and anxiety, but the actual deployment was bloody brilliant.
Yeah. So what happened on that deployment? Guys, I assume this is a deployment where you had some kind of incident that gave you the PTSD, right?
Yeah. So
did you get blown up?
No, I didn't get blown up. So my friend Dom did. I was his battlefield casualty replacement. So when we deployed to Afghan, I went ahead of the teams in my unit. I went ahead of those to go to Camp Bastion, which is the main base in Afghan for the most of the different countries of forces. I know, like, the Americans have got Leatherneck, which used to be strapped onto the side. But I went out to Bastion, and I was there because I was really good at ground sign awareness. Like looking for like linear features where cables are going to be hidden and stuff like that. I went out there to train the troops who were coming in to Bastion, ready to go out on the ground. I'd be there for refresher course initially, but I was always as a battlefield casualty replacement. And then when Dom got hit, he lost his right leg. I went out to replace him. We had loads of friends that, like Ryan, he put, my friend Ryan, he was on one of the close teams, and he got a reading on the equipment to say there was something in the ground, and he turned around to say, "Oh, I've got something." So everyone who's behind him stops, and then obviously part of the process is when you turn back around, you're meant to give it another search just to make sure you know exactly where you're about to dig. And but he didn't do that. He turned around, said, "I got something." Turned back around, put his equipment down, and he leant down on the floor, and he uncovered like where he thought it was, and there was nothing there. He couldn't find anything. And when he went to get back up, he had put his elbows over the device, so the device was between his elbows and his chest. And when he went to get back up, he put his hand down on it, and it blew up and broke loads of ribs. It didn't kill him. It proper messed him up, like broken ribs and all sorts of bad stuff. But that doesn't really affect that never really affected me. And like Jimmy, he was on another close team. He lost both his legs. We had guys that got killed, and all sorts of your ID search teams, like you pretty much as far forward as you can get. You're in front of everybody clearing the routes. And that's like,
were you guys using we called them, we had Valens, is that?
We had Valens, but they brought out the horn. Another bit of equipment was called a horn, and it had a ground penetrating radar, so it wasn't picking metal up, it would pick up a void in the ground. So the problem with the void is when it rains, that void fills, so it's very hard to get a reading on. So but yeah, so
we were using the same equipment. That's cool.
Yeah. Then they brought out cool. There was another piece called the white bait. I don't know if you ever came across that one. I don't remember that one. No, so that was a new bit of equipment, but that was looking for, I can't remember what it was looking for. It was like linear crosses or something within wires. They wanted us to test it live on the ground. We were like, no chance. We ain't taking that on the ground. It was like a Ghostbusters backpack. Do you know what I mean? And you had this bloody cable, and it was like bulky, and you couldn't carry anything else with it. And they wanted us to test it. We were testing it on our patrol base, just to get an idea of how it worked. And we weren't happy with how it worked, and they'd invested like how many millions into developing this, and we were like,
no,
we're not using this. Seal of approval.
It's already bad enough you got us out here as human mind detectors with a fucking metal detector. I don't want to play with your new equipment to find out if it fucking works. No, I'm with you on that, man. Well, because you got to remember, I deployed every other year basically from 2004 to 2012. So I got to see the evolution of all of this equipment, like all the equipment, from anti-sniper technology to mine rollers to the metal detectors, the Valens. And I think we had another one. I can't remember what it was. Our Valens had the GPR on them. So I know what you're talking about with those voids. And I saw all that stuff. And I also, that same deployment, those guys were using that stuff. I heard all of the complaints. I know about all of the complaints. Like it's a terrifying fucking job to be the guy holding that damn thing. Like you just don't know, and we have plenty of guys who found out, unfortunately.
Well, like the horn, obviously when you get the GPR on, it causes like a wobble sound, like a warble. And when you first get it, you're like, how the fuck am I going to find anything with this? Because it's picking everything up. But eventually, after like a couple of weeks, you tune into it and you can just tell when it's picking something up that shouldn't be there, even though it's constantly making a noise. And you're like, when it comes across, if you're like, oh, that sound ain't normal.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
there. I know exactly where it is, So, and you can even, you scan forward and backwards as well as side to side. You can get a good idea of the size of it as well, of what's under there, So it's really accurate, really, really good bit of kit. And I think, it goes a fair depth as well, So,
Now,
I like
since
that.
you guys are engineers, when you would find them, would you guys disarm them, or do you guys have your own EOD like we do, where you have
We
to
have our own
cordon it
EOD.
off and then call EOD out, and they fucking spend the rest of the entire day to clear your route?
Yeah, well, so the logistics have explosive ordnance disposal as well, and then you have 3 EOD Royal Engineers, which is a bomb disposal unit for the engineers. I was 3-9, so I wasn't a specialist unit, but we re-rolled into, we did 18 months training before going out there, so we kind of re-rolled into it. But yeah, the guys that go down, like the thing that really pissed me off on my tour was, we're the guys that find them, right? So our legs are on the line, and basically what happens, we say it's here, we've uncovered it, we sprayed around it, you've got little markers, it's like, a big beacon saying here's the bomb or the ID, and then all the EOD has to do is go down there, connect a few wires or a detonator, blow it up, and they get all the credit. And you're like, yeah, this guy's detonated like 55 bombs, proper like Hurt Locker style, and you're like, yeah, but the ID searchers are the ones that fucking found it. I mean, and it just used to wind me up. And one of the bomb disposal guys was a Navy diver. And that's why I joined the Navy. And initially, I joined as a diver, but I got injured on course and re-rolled again. But we'll talk about that later. But going back to the question, was Afghan the thing that caused the PTSD? And we had, like I said, we had a lot of friends that were injured, some that were killed. We had like firefights coming in all the time, every day.
Yeah,
pretty much
typical Afghanistan.
Yeah. But we rarely fight. Well, we didn't fire. We had like infantry cordon, so they would take care of the firefight, and we were there to find the bombs. We had our weapons with us, but typically we weren't there. We were just there in case they get too heavy contact and we have to step up as secondary fire. Yeah, so we went through. There was one scenario. Rifleman James Steele, he was part of the rifles, infantry soldier, and he got killed. So we got a call. For those who don't know about IED search teams, so when you find IEDs, you get rid of all the IDs and weapons caches and clear compounds. But part of that job is also, if there's anything that gets detonated or injuries or casualties or anything like that, you've got to go out and get the investigation done. So that means recovering everything: body parts, weapons, anything you can find. And we got this call saying, "Oh, there's a guy, infantryman, been hit with an IED on patrol." And when we were on our way out there, we were told that his team had got him on the helicopter to Bastion, alive. He was still obviously strapped up in real bad condition. But he had died on the flight back, and they didn't know that his team was still on the ground, securing the area to make sure we could go in and recover what we needed to. And they didn't know he died, so we weren't allowed to mention it. So all the time we were there, even speaking face to face to his friends, you were like, I know your friend's dead and you ain't got a fucking clue about it. Do you know what I mean? And that was a horrible feeling. Yeah. And basically when we got there, we found the blast point, and we do our isolation first. So you go around the area, make sure there's no wires going into it, and then you can do the route. But when we got to the blast point, it was huge. And when we found his rifle was about 70 meters away. It had been split in half. We found one part of it about 70 meters. We found one of his legs. His legs had both been blown off at the hip. They were gone, like from waist down. We found one of his legs, a few bits of flesh, and we put it all in bags. And the gruesome side of combat. But then at the time, I had a bit of equipment called the Goldie. I don't know if you ever came across a Goldie.
I do. I remember the Goldie.
Find the wires under the ground.
Yeah.
And for that to work, it had to have, I can't remember how much wire it had to have either side, but it had to have like 10 or 20 meters either side to pick up the frequency within the wire. And I was right next to the blast point. I was like literally like 2 meters away. And I got this reading. I was like, hang on, there's something here. Like there's a cable. And they were like, yeah, it's probably going to the hole, the blast hole. I was like, nah, this is fucking, there's something here. Like, and like I pulled the cable, we had a metal hook. You hook the ground. And I pulled the cable and I was like, it went past the hole and there was a fucking secondary device waiting for us. But it was only luck, pure luck that day, that we pushed our cord out far enough. It was past the firing point. So they couldn't get to the firing point. So they knew that we were going to come out and investigate. And that's what people don't understand. It's like, you're in some shit and people are waiting to kill you. They want you dead and they will try everything they can. They'll set up secondaries, thirds, even like pressure release. So you try and pull something out of the ground, it's got something underneath it and it'll have you with that, whatever they can do to get you.
It's you're absolutely right about that. There was a book before I went to Afghanistan. I can't remember what it's called, but it's written by a fighter from the other side, over there, the Taliban, Al Qaeda, somebody, some Pakistani or something, some fighter. And they talk about, they knew not only how to set secondary IEDs based on our TTPs, right? The cordons that we set off, but they also knew how long they needed to make us run up mountains with all of our gear on before we're too tired to actually be effective in a fight against them before they can win. So they have strategies in place and have written doctrine about this stuff. So, this isn't, even though, I think you'll admit, like being over there, it's very primitive over there. It was always odd to me, particularly because I spent more time in Iraq, that everybody has a cell phone and a car and a satellite dish on their home, but there's zero running water. They walk out of their back door and squat 50 feet from their back door to take a shit. And it's like, well, we're living in the Stone Age with some modern technology, but not in the right places it needs to be in. And then you read something like that, and it's like, oh, these fuckers know how to fight.
Well, the ECM, the backpacks, electronic countermeasures. Yes. So they were trying to figure out how far that bubble reached. So what they would do, they would set an ID and they keep pressing fire until until you came out of the bubble, and they were like, right, that's how big the bubble is. So that they can figure out your distance of everything. It doesn't matter what it is.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts, like, but I don't know if you remember that, because you said you did quite a few deployments, but there was it wasn't on our tour, it was a couple of tours before. We were on Herrick 15, so like 2011 to 2012. It was a little bit before our deployment, but there was a period where guys were, obviously you're carrying 70-80 kilos, it's like 70 degrees heat, you've been out on the ground for 8 hours, you're fucked, you got hardly any water left, you're bollocks, so it's quite easy to get lazy with your processes. And for a little while they were watching our guys on the ground, and guys were like, they get a reading on the equipment, they just take a knee and they just like brush the top off of the dust to see if there's anything there, rather than the way you're meant to go is dig down the side and come alongside it in case it releases anything. And they ended up developing a system called the banjo string. And what it did, it had copper wires running along the top of it. So when you brush it, it would connect. And it was
remember
pure,
that.
Do you remember? Yeah, and it was pure luck.
I
But
do.
the first guy that found that actually dug down sideways and come alongside it. And when they realized what was going on, that fed through the chain like really quick. Because they were like, do not cut corners with your confirming, because that's how they're trying to get you. And another one, they knew that the Valen could read metal. So they used to use like saw blades and that as connectors, didn't they? And stuff like that. And they were, the big D-cell batteries that used to go in the van. Our lads were chucking them, over 5 or 6 years. Our lads used to chuck them on the ground, and they rip them apart and take the carbon rod out of them. There's a little carbon piece in the middle, and they were using that to connect the circuit instead of using metal. So they're so clever with how they do stuff. Very, very clever, and you got to respect them for that. They're not stupid. Like, but yeah. Then obviously, that guy got hit. We recovered his body parts, and then we went back to their. It was only probably 300 meters away from their patrol base. So it was quite close. And then we went back to the patrol base, and we went to one side to sort our kit out before going back to our base. And then the sergeant major, the patrol base, the sergeant major in control of that patrol base, called all the team in. His lads, and you could tell, like, he told them that he died, and there was just like grown men crying. And at the time, that was really hard for me as well, just watching that, because you're like, fucking hell, like, there must be 30, 40 blokes in tears, and they've all lost one of their best mates. And, that was really hard. It used to get me choked up quite a lot, but that wasn't the main thing that took place. So the main thing that happened on Afghan, I know I've gone along for quite some time with this, but
no, it's great, man. No, this is what we're here for, to tell the stories, man.
Like, every little thing. Like, like just before I go on to the next thing, there was we had R&R. We get 2 weeks. I don't know if you guys get R&R as well, don't you?
You would do,
Do
yeah.
you go back home, or do you just stay in Leatherneck?
No. You go home. Yeah. So you funnel through. I have the most experience with Iraq, and my Afghanistan deployment, I didn't get any R&R, but in Iraq, we would go back to Ali Al Salim and then catch a flight to either Atlanta or Dallas if you were coming back to the States. A lot of guys would use it as an opportunity to go tour Europe. Because it's so accessible and you can make the most of your time there, and it's a free ticket, right? So, but yeah, when overall a 2-week R&R turns into about a 21 or 25 day kind of event between traveling, through country and all that stuff. So we go home.
Yeah. What took place with our R&R? We throughout the first part of our tour, everyone was like, I want to go home at Christmas, and everyone was like fighting for these different times when they wanted to go, and we were just like, we'll just go whenever. We don't really care. And it was just purely because of that, we got to go home just before Christmas. Well, at Christmas and up to New Year's. So we were off for the 2-week period then. And a couple of days before New Year's Day, we flew back and got back to Bastion, got all our kit, flew out to our new patrol base, and, obviously jet lagged to hell. So the day we got there, we got there at night, really late at night. Then the next day they said, just chill out for the day. We'll have a brief in the morning tomorrow. Or for the ground, and give you some intel of what's gone on. And so we were like out cold. There was 8 of us in our tent, 8-man search team, just asleep. We have some chocolate milkshakes that we got from the NAFI and stuff like that, or whatever, whatever we could get, and sugar up and get our heads down for the day. And then after that was the day before New Year's Day 2012. Then New Year's Day 2012 was the day we were having the brief. And we all, like, some of our team were required, not all of us were required in the command room. They were just going to give us the brief to a couple of us, and we just sort of pass on the message. But there was a couple of our team in the command room. A couple of us were just playing, I think we were putting lottery numbers on or something on that at the time, just in the chill out area. And out of nowhere, like, they were saying in the command room, don't worry guys, we know we've been through quite a lot of shit by this point. And they said, we know, you've been through a lot of stuff already, but don't worry about this area, because this base has never even been fired at. It hadn't had small arms fire, mortar fire. There was nothing that had gone, and it was just empty, real quiet. And that's the day after we get there. Literally, we're having this brief. 3 mortars hit base. First one through our tent roof. Boom.
Great. Awesome.
Straight through our tent roof. Literally, the day after we get there. And the first one went through our tent roof, and they were like, right, lads, we didn't have our helmet and body armor, so they were like, go and get your body armor and helmets. Bear in mind that the command room's got like hard cover over it, sandbags and everything, so we're pretty safe in there. And we ran down to our tent, and like literally me and my friend Dave, and the tent is just like full of dust, fire alarm going off. We were like, shit, man, somebody's got to be in there. Like, there's no way. We're all jet lagged. We're not all in the command room. Somebody's got to be asleep in there. And me and Dave were like going around the tent, flipping the cot beds, and we're like, if there's somebody on the bed, we'll feel it. If you couldn't see anything, you're just trying to find your way around. Turned out nobody was in there. Finally found our body armor and stuff like that, and then got back to the command room, and then the other 2 mortars hit base. And it just goes to show me, even though it had never been fired, it was like trouble was following us everywhere we went. And but that was New Year's Day 2012, and literally before going back to Afghan, I bought like fresh boxer shorts, fresh socks, and aftershave, just because I wanted something that smelled more than desert. And I bought like mountain bike magazines, DVD player, electric shaver, because I was fed up of like wet shaving. I bought loads of nice bits to take back, and literally the day I got there, it was blown to pieces. My box was destroyed, and I was like on the phone to my mum. I was like, Mum, can you send me some more stuff out, because we just had a mortar and it's destroyed everything. And she's like, what the hell's going on over there? I was like, I'll tell you when I get back. So that was 2012.
She's not happy about that call.
No,
what's going on over there? Don't worry about it. I'll tell you when I get home.
Yeah,
just send me more shit.
I don't care. Yeah. But
we're laughing about it, but it's very true. It's how it goes.
Yeah, well, you've got to have a sadistic mindset, like a sadistic sense of humor, because like if you don't, you'll go. Like we used to go out on the ground and we used to put bets on who'd lose the legs first in our team, because you've got to have like dark humor, otherwise you were nuts. Like you'll go mental over there, So
Well, I remember our first casualty on my Afghanistan deployment. Josh Wetzel lost both of his legs, and his guys on the ground, like when they got him on the gurney, taking him to the helicopter, he's like, "Did you see how high I got? Did you see that flip?" And it's like, dude, you just lost both your legs, and you're joking about this right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I really do think, like you said, like that's the sense of humor you have to get through that shit, right? Like, because Josh has gone on and done some amazing things as a double amputee now, and is a huge inspiration to a lot of people. And it's like, if he didn't have that sense of humor, it could have very easily ended up the opposite way, where he's now a double amputee that is fucking completely miserable and going nowhere in life, And I agree with you, dude. You just have to have that, like you said, that sadistic, just off kilter mindset.
I think that's why military struggle so much to blend back into civvy street, like civilian jobs and stuff like that. Because like, I hate to say it, but like most civilians are very soft, and I don't mean that to be offensive. I mean like they haven't been put through a situation where there's bullets at your feet, you're trying to find a bomb, you've got a casualty to deal with, there's mortars going over your head, grenades being launched everywhere, like
it's a different level of adversity, right?
And when you've got that adrenaline and that level of responsibility to deal with, your mind becomes something completely different. And when you go into like a civilian job, you can no longer have that banter with the Indian guy that it works with you, because now what you see as joking and sarcasm and banter is now racism and bullying, and it's hard to explain that to civilians, because like when you're in the military, you have people from all cultures, and there's no race. Like, I don't know if racism exists, but I never saw racism in the military. Like, everybody was there to save each other, but you also had different cultures and nicknames based on their culture, and it was just that was it.
It was, and yeah, it's appropriate. It's how business is conducted, and you you get used to it. No, I'm with you on that for sure.
And when you're trying to come out of into civvy street, it's like, this is why people struggle, because they can't go at it like a bull in a china shop anymore, and they can't have that banter, and they're like, people who've been in the military who haven't seen combat won't even understand. Do you know what I mean? Some people join for 4 years and never see outside the gates of their base, the UK base or US base, so they will never understand either. They've been through the training, but it's not the same as when you get on that ground and you have to deal with everything. Like, I've seen some videos of Marines, and they're like, in the irrigation ditches, like up to their chest in water, and they're trying to get through it, and they've got stuff going over there, and it's like,
yep, here we are.
Nobody will understand
we're
that.
here.
Nobody will understand that until you've been through it. And I think that's where there's a massive disconnect, and I think there should be more focus on that transition back to civvy street. But anyway, moving on from that, the biggest part that affected me in Afghan, so I'm over it now, because obviously we'll go through the hypnotherapy talk and that shortly, but I want to quickly sort of talk about the hypnotherapy a little bit before I go on with it, because before hypnotherapy, what I'm about to talk about was like a very, very intense memory. I was reliving it every day, and when I got through hypnotherapy, now I have to think quite hard to think back to that event, like it's distant memory, and I have to think of the details, and it's a bit slower to like think about now, where before hypnotherapy it was like I could just talk about and break down, and it was like I was reliving it every day, so. But essentially what had happened, we got called out to a job, and I think I've said it a few times on other podcasts, but I think it was to go and clear a tree line. I think that's what the job was, but I can't quite remember. And it would have been the same with you, but when we go out as an ID search team, you had infantry at the front, like a infantry patrol or 2 infantry patrols at the front, then us, then another one at the back, I think it was. I can't remember. I can't remember the order it was in now, but essentially you'd have like, I don't know, like somewhere near like 200 men, 100 or 200 men there. And when we're going to a job, everything's single file. There's one guy at the front clearing the route, and everyone goes down the same route, and you're all in single file, and
Pretty much stepping where the other guys stepped.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you're
It's
relatively safe.
imperative.
Yeah. So, but where I was the last man on my team in my patrol, and then obviously the infantry one is like 100 meters back or 200 meters back, wherever they are, down way back. And we took a knee in the field because obviously they were trying to work out what was the next move at the front. And bear in mind, the front of my patrol was probably 300 meters ahead. I don't know how far it would have been, but it was a fair distance. And where I took a knee, I'm watching the back, and where I took a knee was next to this little house, little Afghan house, little hut. And a dad and two kids came out, and the dad stayed by the house. The son came sort of halfway between me and the house, and the daughter came all the way up to me, and she was trying to ask me something. I knew she was in distress, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I just thought, is she trying to get, like a lot of them come for like biscuits or sweets or pens, or you start taking stuff out of your pocket going, oh, I've got this. And she's like, no. I was like, well, I don't understand what you're saying. So she lifted her sleeve up, and she had a septic arm, mate, and it was from the wrist to the shoulder. It was like deep, like sepsis. And bear in mind, she's only like 3 or 4 years old. And at the time, I didn't really think much of it. Obviously, you pump with adrenaline, you're on a job, you got things to focus on. But anyway, I radioed ahead, and we had a female doctor at the front. And bear in mind, like I said, it's like 200 or 300 meters in front. And I radioed ahead, and I said, oh, we've got a young girl here, needs medical attention. She's in a bad way. And they radioed back, and they just said, leave her there, we've got a job to do. And that was the snap that I was like, I'm done with the army. Like, they always talk about, I don't know if you ever had the phrase hearts and minds. You got to win the hearts and minds, win the hearts and minds. And I was like, you're leaving a 4-year-old girl to fucking die of sepsis, and you're saying hearts and minds to everyone. And it's like, it's bullshit, so, but when we left, for 12 years, I blamed myself that we left her there. Like I should have done more, like I should have put more of a battle up on the radio. But for 12 years, I thought it was my fault. Do you know what I mean? That's what I struggled with for so long. And especially now I've got like a 3-year-old daughter approaching the same age. And that's where I had the breakdown, probably 7 months ago. But like, as I approached like the 11th, 12th year, I started talking about it. People were like, you got to remember that the doctor made the decision to leave it there, not you. And I was like, yeah, but that doesn't change it. And then it was like, as I started to go through, reassessing the situation, I started to realize the doctor didn't understand the level of which that kid was sick. I didn't relay a message properly to her, so she couldn't understand it. She couldn't see because she's like 300 meters in front. For all I know, another infantry patrol could have come through later on and saved her. So she might be fine now. I don't know. But there was all these little components of the story that I was not even thinking about. And like I said, I struggled for so long. And when I had my breakdown, my daughter was approaching, she's like three and a half now. She was 3 in March. So yeah, 3.5. But when she was approaching 3, I'd kind of had my PTSD under control for quite a long time. It was still there, but I wasn't breaking down and didn't really think much of it. And I was always stressed and pissed off and snappy and stuff like that. But there was a period where the PTSD started coming back quite aggressively, and I couldn't figure out why. And it went on for a while.
Because you're looking at your daughter every day, and it's reminding you it's a trigger.
I was playing with her one day, and I was like, holy shit, like you're the same age as that girl. And then once I clicked what it was, I realized that she was a daily reminder of what had happened. And bear in mind, I'd still blame myself at that point. And like I still get choked up about it, talking about it now, but nowhere near what I used to. I used to be a bloody mess, breaking down, crying, but at that point, I hadn't been through hypnotherapy at that point. And I've got 17,000 followers on LinkedIn. At the time, I think I had about 16,000. And people knew something wasn't right because I wasn't DMing, I wasn't commenting, I wasn't posting regular. Like my habit online changed dramatically. And when I had that breakdown, I was like, I've got to say something on LinkedIn. I was crying on the video. I was like, this is what's going on, and I'm struggling and all that. And then out of nowhere, I had 3 therapists get in touch. One did EMDR, one was part of a psychedelic trial, and another one was hypnotherapy. And obviously, Dan Martin was my hypnotherapist, and he was the first one that got in touch. He said, you know, because he followed me anyway from what we do, the work we do. So he was obviously one of the first ones to see the video. And he reached out. He said, look, dude, I normally work with addiction, but happy to, you know, go through a course of hypnotherapy, see if it will help. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, bear in mind, like we said before we got on this call, like you put it off, you doubt it. Like I didn't pay for hypnotherapy because I was like, there's no way it's going to work because it's all in your head. How is a little conversation going to fix all these problems? I was like, it's a load of bullshit. I was like, hypnotherapy is not going to do the job. And I was like, when he offered it for free, I was like, fuck it, what have I got to lose?
Right. Nothing to lose at that point. And
a couple of calls, you know, a couple of months, whatever, you know, I'll give it a shot and see what happens. And so I said, yeah, dude. I was like, okay. The other 2 that offered the stuff, I put a post out. I said, look, if anyone else is struggling, there's 2 other offers on the table. You know, I want to document it for my YouTube channel. If anybody takes it, come forward, and I want to, you know, document what you've gone through with that. Nobody came forward and taken it, which was unfortunate, because it would have been a good story to see how they got on, as well as, you know, the 2 courses of therapy. And
it's so necessary to help our community too, man. It's the whole reason I have this show is because, you know, everybody gets through, and I call it the transition hole, or, you know, really the transition hole, because I think a lot of these problems start to manifest a whole lot worse after you transition out or begin the end of the military career, because, you know, you're losing that, like you said, that sense of sadistic mentality where you're around like-minded people. You know, you're so ingrained in mission and one job, one team, one fight that you really don't know who you are. And I think getting out amplifies all of the PTSDs and the TBIs and just the things that we deal with. And, you know, I was the same way you are. I credit ayahuasca with my awakening and starting my healing journey and all of the progress that I've made. So it's cool to hear that you had a psychedelic guy reach out to you. I then, you know, I turned my nose up at all that stuff too. I was the same way. I haven't explored hypnotherapy yet, and it's definitely, after talking to you, something I really want to, you know, at least experience once. But I did experience EMDR, and EMDR is pretty cool in itself. Like I experienced that after ayahuasca on a Operation Red Wings retreat, and it was really cool, man. It was really cool to sit with that therapist and have her do her little back and forth and really like do some serious work on myself. So I plead with everybody who's listening to this, like, don't be that guy that's dismissing all these alternative therapies, because they're fucking amazing, man. They really are.
Yeah. Well, before I went through like all of this and before I even came out of the military, I went down a path of really bad depression. And this is when I'd moved over to the Navy now. So I'd left the Army. I was out a couple of months and I couldn't cope out. I went back in the military. I needed that structure. I needed the uniform. I just needed something. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. But when I was in the Navy, I joined as a diver, got injured on course, I think about 6 weeks in. Something like that. Then I re-branched into the Fleet Air Arm. So I became an aircraft handler working with the aviation. And loud noises, like constant loud noises, used to really stress me out. And helicopters were like 5 years of hell that was for me. It was just like every day was just like really, really stressful. But there was a period when I was there, I was going through depression. I'd lost my fitness. My diet was crap. I wasn't sleeping. I put on weight. I was just avoiding public places. I just couldn't. I was an absolute mess. And I started. I got a phone call. I went on leave. I had 2 grandfathers die within 5 weeks, and the first one I took 2 weeks off, just normal leave. And halfway through my leave, my granddad lived next door. He had a heart attack, and I was trying to save him, and he died. And that sent me in another spiral. Bear in mind, I was already struggling. And then 5 weeks later, I was on base, It was like 240 miles away from home. And I had a call. My other granddad, he was an ex-Marine, so I was really close to him. And he had a brain tumor. We knew he wasn't well, but they said, oh, he's been rushed into hospital. He's probably not going to make it. So I was like, fucking hell. So I was like, dropped everything. This was like about 4 p.m. I was at work. I said, I need to get home. And then I started driving home, and bear in mind it's 240 odd miles, but I hit traffic, and then it was getting later and later and later. And I ended up getting to the hospital, and it was like past visiting hours. And I was like, look, my granddad's probably not going to make it. I'm in the military. Can I come in and just see him? And when I went in there, he got pneumonia. He was unconscious. He had a brain tumor. He's like really struggling to breathe. And that was 11 p.m. I stayed there till 12. And then I left. And then my mum rang me the next day saying, he passed at 12:30. So literally half hour after I left. And that really hit me. And obviously then at that point, I went really, really down.
Yeah, right off the deep end.
I went off the rails, completely off the rails. And I had, after the first granddad, I started getting bad chest pain, really, really bad chest pain. Couldn't figure out what it was. And when the second one died, it was like even worse. Like I was just like struggling to breathe, chest pain in my left arm, going to med bay every single day. I was in med bay. I was like, I think I've got problems with my heart and something going on. And I had scans, ECGs, cameras down my throat, x-rays. Like it went on for months. And they were like, nah, everything's fine. Like, can't find anything. Like, everything, blood pressure, check my bloods, everything was perfectly normal. And the one day I was like really struggling to breathe, like really bad. And I was like, I need to come to medbay. They said, look, we can't get you in now, but come first thing in the morning. So I was the next morning, I was walking up to medbay for like 8 o'clock. And I was in so much pain breathing and chest pain that I was pouring with sweat. I was just like, I was in a real bad way. I got to medbay. I was like, I can't wait in the waiting room. Just get me in there. And the doctor said, oh, lift your shirt up and let's check your heart and listen to your heart again. I lift my shirt up. I just broke down crying. He's like, you're struggling with anxiety. And that's when, then once I knew that was a problem, they put me on antidepressants. And then that didn't work. I mean, for like 6 months, that made me feel like shit. I was like, it was making me have stomach problems. I had like allergies to foods, and it was making me feel tired, and it was just putting me even further in the hole. And one day I woke up in the morning, and I was just like, I made the decision. I was like, I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm done feeling like this. So I was like, well, I got to fix it. So the first thing I did, I knew the anxiety was a problem, because the anxiety caused pain, that caused depression, that set the PTSD off, which then caused more anxiety. And I was like, right, I need to attack one of these points first. It's like a triangle. I was like, I got to attack one of these points first. And I knew the meds weren't doing me any good. So I thought, right, stop the meds. And I thought, well, I'm going to go online, try and find some kind of herbal natural thing for anxiety. And I found, I've got a box here. Like, this isn't marketing, by the way, but I keep a box now. But it's a company called Calmed Lavender Capsules, right? And I'm not suggesting everyone go and try these now, but it's 80 milligrams of lavender oil. And I came across them online, and they said it was really good for anxiety. And I ordered a couple of boxes, and I thought, it says take one a day. And I was like, fuck that. 3, straight away, 3. Right? It's like,
go big or go home.
Yeah. Like,
let's fix this problem.
I was like, it's lavender oil. What's it going to do? Anyway, I took 3 of them, mate, and within an hour, I was calm. My anxiety had gone. I was like, right, I know how to get under control with the anxiety. Right, if I've got a double dose, triple dose, I don't care how many of these I have to take. I've got to get the anxiety under control. Once I did that, I was like, right, what's the next point? Okay, well, I know I'm out of shape. So at that point then I was like, right, well, I ain't got the confidence to go to the gym. And if I go for a run, I'm probably going to have a heart attack because I put so much weight and I was out of shape. And I knew that 4 a.m., bear in mind I was on base, the gym's open with a key fob anytime you want to go. I knew at 4 a.m. the gym was empty. I knew there was maybe going to be one person at the most, but normally there's nobody. So I knew then I had to form or try and build a habit of getting to the gym. And this took about 12 or 18 months. But basically what I did, I knew 4 a.m. was going to be empty. So what I did, I got into the habit of waking up at 4 a.m. in my room and just sitting in my room. I wouldn't go to the gym. I just build a habit of 4 a.m. waking up. And once I got consistent at that every day, I was like, right, okay, next thing I'm going to do now, wake up at 4 a.m. and I'm going to go and sit outside the gym and just play on my phone. So I got into that habit of just going outside the gym, nothing major. And people think, oh, why don't you just go in the gym? Because you haven't got the confidence to go in there. And then it was like, okay, now I'm outside the gym at 4 a.m. for like 3, 4, 5 weeks. Now I'm going to go into the gym and just sit there on my phone, get into the habit of being in the gym. And then eventually it was like, right, now I'm going to do 5 minutes on the cross trainer at 4 a.m. And then I'm going to do 10 minutes. And the reason I did cross trainer is no impact. I could push as soft as I wanted to, just get into that habit. Did that for 3 or 4 months. And I was like, right, okay, now I want to start doing pull-ups, press-ups, sit-ups. And eventually I got into the habit of 4 a.m. gym. And eventually with micro improvements, tiny, it was only little tiny things I was improving each time. But over like 12 or 18 months, I was back to my own weight. I'd got my weight back down. My fitness was back up. I was on point. Anxiety was under control, within reason because of the not the meds, but the other stuff I was taking. And once I got that under control, then I started going into meditation. And I was like, right, now I need to get my mind fixed. And I started reading books, and it wasn't self-help books, but like, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I hated reading, and I knew that was a beast of a book. And I was like, right, 300 pages of a micro font. I was like, that's going to take me months. I'll just read 10 pages a day. I'll just get into the habit of reading 10 pages a day. And eventually I got into meditation and all that sort of stuff. And, within 2 years, I started to pull myself out of that hole that I was in. But it was 2 years, man. Like
I love that you're talking about this right now, because one of my favorite books is Atomic Habits. And you literally took it the way he tells people to take it and breaks it down in that book. Like to a T, from just getting up at 4 a.m. That's the first step, right? And you do that enough times, and then just going to the gym and sitting outside of the gym, right? Like, it's baby steps for everything. And you're a perfect example of how all of that compounds to create this overarching habit of actually working out, being a healthy weight. And what people aren't realizing is by creating those habits, you're actually chipping away at that anxiety. And by getting more active and doing the physical fitness, well, that also has been proven to help with anxiety, right? So I'm willing to bet that if you worked out enough, you could probably get off of the lavender oil if you wanted to, even though it's, it's a natural plant medicine. I
take it once every 3-4 weeks now, even if that. Sometimes that pack's been there 2 months, not even touched, but that's what people need to understand is them tiny habits. Because if I woke up one morning, I go, I'm going to go to the gym 4 a.m. I'm going to do half hour on the treadmill, going to do pull-ups, dips, sit-ups, do bench 150 kilos, deadlifts. I would have killed myself day one, never gone back.
You've been so sore that you're just like, this isn't worth it. I don't want to do this anymore. And, I did the same thing after my ayahuasca trip. I was 311 pounds. I'm 217 this morning. At the lowest, I made it back to 211, so 100 total pounds. That's probably not a healthy weight for me. I think somewhere between 220 and 225 is where I'll probably live. But I also started very small. I didn't start with a gym. I started by, incremental intermittent fasting. So I think I started at like 16 hours, and then I pushed it up to 20. So I've been on 20 hours a day for a long time now. That ebbs and flows depending on how active I am. But I also started walking. And when I started small, just like you, I would get up and I would just walk one lap around the block for less than a quarter of a mile, right? Like, we can all walk that much. It's not, just walking around your house, being as lazy as you possibly can, you're going to walk a quarter of a mile in a day. And then, it's now grown into this habit where I walk 4 miles as soon as I get out of bed every single morning, and I do it in under an hour. So I'm moving at a pretty good grip. You know what I mean?
It feels like nothing. It's nothing now.
No. And there are days where it's harder than others. I got a lot of pain, a lot of arthritis everywhere, but like, it's the one thing that I know I can always count on to make sure that my day starts off well. And if I do it every single day, I largely don't have problems. If I don't do it, or I don't plan an actual rest day, if something messes with that routine, it's so hard for me to have a decent day. And, it's all because of those tiny habits. And I love that you're speaking to that right now, because that is how you heal.
Yeah, you've got to be so careful with it. Like, this is the thing. It's like, I tried to cut sugar out years ago, a couple of years back, and I'm back on it now, but I'm going to start going more towards carnivore diet. But when you cut sugars out, it was when I was training for diver before I went in the Navy. I cut sugars out. Day one, I just went boom, cut everything, sugar just gone, get rid of it. I was trying to cut a bit of body fat. I didn't have much body fat. I was pretty ripped at the time and well built because I was doing so much training. But I thought I'd just try and get that little bit of layer off. And for anybody who's already tried to cut sugars out, just cold turkey, you have like 2 days you feel okay, and the third day you're like, I've got no energy, and like you feel like you don't know what's the matter. It's massive sugar withdrawal. But when you get to that point, I was still trying to train to the level I was already doing 13 fitness sessions a week. And I was trying to still do the same. I was like, but I went to the gym and I get on quite well with the, there's a lady called Jill. She's a fitness trainer in one of the gyms I go to or used to go to. And I was sitting down in the cafe downstairs in the coffee shop. And she came down, she's like, what the hell's up with you? You look like shit. I was like, yeah, I've cut sugars out. She said, don't cut sugars out now. Like if you're about to, because I only had like 4 weeks left before I was going in for selection. She said, wrong time to be cutting out. So literally I went, she said, get a coffee, fill it with sugar, get a cake or a muffin or something and get your training back on point. Anyway, I literally I went from feeling that bad to having coffee and a chocolate muffin in the coffee shop. And then after that, I had the best training session I'd ever had. I was like more pull-ups.
Because your body hadn't adapted to burning the fuel that it needs to burn when it's so used to burning sugar. Because your body will always burn sugar for fuel first. It's the first place it looks. Until you train it to look for fuel elsewhere, you do feel like shit. I think it was about 10 days for me. I just had to suck it up and really just grin and bear it. But dude, so you switched over to the Navy. We talked about that, and you were going to be a diver, got hurt, that didn't work out, and eventually the time comes, 14 years, you've had enough, it's time to move on. So what did your transition from military life to what you used to call it Civvy Street? Is that what you call it? Call it civilian life or the corporate world. What did that look like for you? And do you think it exacerbated a lot of your problems with the PTSD and all of that?
So I think when I came out of the army, it was like military, then nothing. And I struggled. I really freaked out. I needed to go back in. When I went in the Navy, the reason I joined the Navy, part of the reason was because I knew it was a bit of an easier life. I wasn't lazy, but I needed something that wasn't so intense compared to the army. And I thought that might be an easier transition when I come out. But when I was coming out the Navy, the guy who recruited me, he lives quite local to me, and I used to go to the same spin class, so we get on quite well. And he was like a warrant officer, so I could always go and have a coffee and just like a friendly chat because we're just mates as well. He heard that I was coming out, and he said, "Oh, do you want to go into recruitment? Same uniform. You go home every night, go and work in your careers office, uniform, paid by the Navy." And I was like, "Man, that'd be ideal because then I can go home, start to try and get used to being at home." While still going into work, wearing uniform, getting paid by the Navy, and I'd have a bit, not flexibility. I wasn't expecting flexibility, but I'd have that smoother transition.
But more time to work on the transition than just getting out from an active duty unit.
But the guy I had, there was a warrant officer, Royal Marine officer, warrant officer, called Richard, and he was my senior within the office. And my job as a recruiter was to go out to schools, do presentations, public talking, recruitment events and psychometric testing in schools and stuff like that. And I was given, because I was really good at the job, I'm really good at what I do in general, whatever I try to do. But I was opening relationships up with schools that we'd lost contact with years ago before I'd even got there. So I was breaking into new schools and getting all them relationships done and getting psychometric testing on a much bigger scale, because I go into schools and test rather than wait for people to come into the office. So I got loads of flexibility, and I'd always have the works vehicle, and I'd never have anyone on my back. And if I wanted to have a day off, I just have a day off. And because I was doing so much anyway, I completely changed the way the office ran, because we digitized. They used to have the paper T cards in the board to keep track of all the candidates, and I digitized that. And it was just before lockdown. I did all that, and then lockdown happened. It was a good job I did it, because then it was like everyone could work from home. So it really changed the way that all worked. And then when I came out, we had my daughter. I left the military because I didn't want to be away from home every day. I took 3 month gap, doing nothing, just in case we needed hospital appointments. We had quite a few hospital appointments and stuff with the little one. And eventually I was like, right, I need to find a job. And I got my CV together, my resume, and went to the local council. We were holding an employment event in one of the places up the road, literally like 5-minute walk. I thought I'll go up there. And I spoke to a guy called Mike and said, I'm looking for a job, left the military and whatever. And they said, Blair, with your CV, and because I've been in recruitment, they said, do you want to work as an employment coach for the council in partnership with the job centre, for people coming looking for jobs? I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I did that for like, I don't even know, 9 months or something like that. And then eventually I came out of that. And one of the guys I worked with in military recruitment, he used to work for a company called Capita. So he was a civilian working for military recruitment, but he moved into a company called AMS, Alexander Man Solutions. And they were like massive scale corporation for recruitment. They were huge, really, really big company. They worked for like BAE Systems and Barclays and, HSBC and Goldman Sachs, the real big clients that they work with.
Fortune 100 companies. Yeah.
So, I knew he worked there, and I said, I'm thinking of coming into recruitment. He said, you'll struggle to get in because I'd never actually been in an agency recruitment. I was always like in-house for the military, and, an employment coach wasn't really recruitment. They said, you'll struggle. He said, you'll struggle. He said, but one thing you'll get asked in the interview is about Boolean searches. I don't know if you know Boolean search, but it's how they find, it's like you put bits of code in with quotations and or not, how you make it like a search string. To get more accurate search within platforms. He said, if you're going to get asked about Boolean search. So I went online and I looked into Boolean search, spent like a day learning Boolean search, and then I got asked it, and they said, yeah, how do you find candidates, in military? I was, oh yeah, we use Boolean search all the time, and I was just bullshit on my way through the interview. Light straight to it. Yeah, and
motherfucker, I was out here going to schools and knocking doors. I wasn't using Boolean search.
yeah. But, anyway, I found a YouTube channel called Career Vids. A guy called Richard McMunn, and his YouTube channel is phenomenal for interview preparation. Absolutely phenomenal. Like, I'll send you the link, you'll check him out, and if you've got people looking for jobs, send it to him. And he talks about the questions you're likely to get asked, how to ask them, examples of experience, and I was fully prepared for this interview. Like, I was fully out, full ammunition, ready to go. I'd done so much research because I knew the company I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with BAE Systems. I wanted to work as a sourcing specialist to find candidates. So I knew the job, the company. I knew exactly the client. I knew everything I wanted about this company. And it was only that job I was applying for. And in the interview, I got on so well with the interviewer. Will, I was offered the job halfway through the interview. Didn't even finish the interview. Just boom, just walked in as if it was nothing. Never even seen a Boolean search in my life before, like yesterday. So that was defense recruitment, finding nuclear engineers for the subs, ships, aircraft engineers and things like that. So I went into recruitment. And then just before that, I started my design business on LinkedIn. So I wanted to be a graphic designer for 15 years, and I put it off for, military time. And eventually when we had my daughter, I was like, I need to build my own business, something that can operate from home. And, it's not relying on location. It can be moved around. So I thought design would be ideal. So I started looking at coding. I did it for a week. It fried my head. I was like, nah, I'm going to go into design. So I started designing, and 3 months later, I got this job. And brilliant company, well paid, awesome team. Like, it was great. But the only problem was they had, part of your contract was you have to have their branding on your LinkedIn page. You can't talk about your business. It has to be their business, their clients, their jobs, everything to do with them. So they had control. So it meant that my business wasn't growing. So I did 10 months with them.
That's a non-starter for me, man. I'm not playing that game.
No, well, I wouldn't do it again now, but I needed the job at the time. My business was brand new. I didn't have an income. I'd been off work for a little bit as well. So, I ended up doing 10 months then and leaving. And that's when we started building the business on LinkedIn, So, but that obviously that led to the big followers, and then, that led to obviously the PTSD coming out and breakdown, and that's where I met Dan Martin, the hypnotherapist, So, but hypnotherapy, dude, is like people need to at least try it.
Yeah, so that's a big part of your healing journey, right? Like the hypnotherapy is what kind of broke everything wide open for you, because you said after that, then you started paying attention to the meditation and the mindfulness stuff, right?
Mm.
So why do you think all of that stuff? Why do you think nobody knows about it? Like, why is it like to me, it's like the best kept secret about how to live
Meditation
a
or
life.
hypnotherapy? Because big pharma's got control. That's it. That's it. It's the same with the food industry, dude. Like, people are on unsaturated fat. They won't eat animal fat. They think red meat's bad for you, but they'll feed their kids bloody rainbow Hoot Loops for breakfast, chemical cereal, full of sugar, full of crap, full of like stuff you can't even pronounce. And then they think people are weird for having like 8 eggs for breakfast.
That's like a good breakfast, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously I know that that's the problem, but like, what do you think we can do about it other than what you and I are, you have your own podcast where you talk about similar things. I am a huge, proponent for plant medicine and alternative, therapies and all of that. Like, other than what we're currently doing, what can we do to change that? Because I really do like, working with a nonprofit, I have access to some pretty startling numbers. We lost 15,000 U.S. service members in the global war on terror to suicide. In just since the war has ended, we've lost 10 times that amount, 150,000 to suicide. And I think it's largely because a lot of these modalities are kept secret. They're not. I don't know. I mean, you and I both kind of had a similar opinion about it. It's all woo woo. It's all bullshit. It doesn't fucking work. And, we don't open our minds to it because it's not widely accepted in, our societies. Correct. So beyond what you and I are currently doing to draw attention to this, shouting it from the mountaintops, how do we change this? How do we get more people to understand, like, open your mind for one fucking session, just one session of hypnotherapy or one ayahuasca ceremony, or have a night of mushrooms and do it with the proper intentions and in a ceremonial setting with people who train their entire lives to work with this stuff, because it's life-changing. It's life-changing. And I just want to know what can we do that's more to get more people on board with this.
So obviously I started my YouTube channel when I came out on LinkedIn with my breakdown. I had 9 guys in my DMs and they were like, how the fuck did you have the confidence to come out and say that publicly? Because they've been struggling for so long. I interviewed a guy, Bentley, and he'd been struggling for 20 years. He tried to kill himself with a shotgun. He was a lorry driver, heavy HGV driver over in Canada. And he was involved in a road traffic collision in the snow. It wasn't his fault. The car came onto his side of the road. He ended up killing the girl in the car, and he tried to save her. And he was in the middle of nowhere. Canada's got like fucking 200 miles before the next destination. Long roads. And she died. He couldn't cope, and he still struggles quite a bit now. He's been through therapy now, but I think it's sometimes it's beyond therapy. Sometimes, but like the main reason. He was one of the guys that came out in my DMs, and a load of other guys as well. And they were like, we've been struggling for years and we can't talk about it. And I was like, man, this is a big problem. Like, guys don't talk. Like if a woman's got issues, she normally goes crying to her friends, and her friends are like the support network. And, then they're connected to like all these different female groups, and, whatever their PTSD or trauma is, if it's a miscarriage or husband beating them or, some kind of accident or whatever, they've got a massive support network. But men lock it up, and this is the big problem. Like, I think because there's a massive stigma of people thinking that it's weak if you are emotionally damaged as a bloke, as a man. The reason I started my channel, I've got much bigger plans for it, but it's going to take a long time to build it. But I wanted to initially get stories from men. I only interview men. I don't interview women. Like, women can go somewhere else. They've got their own network. But the idea behind it is to interview men, to get their stories, and to see if they've already gone through a healing process, what it was, how it worked, how long did it take. If they haven't healed, I've got contacts now that I can suggest. But I think, to answer your question, I think the only thing we can do is get stories, because the more people who come out and say this helped me, you get that herd mentality of it helped him. Here's another 25 guys it helped. They've all come forward. They've all got the confidence to speak about it. Now I'm more open to trying it. You know, like even now, like I said, I put it off for 12 years, hypnotherapy. I wouldn't go near it. Just wouldn't go near it. And now I had a guy I spoke to who was struggling. Not on a massive scale, but you know, he's having a bit of a hard time. And when I had hypnotherapy, I had the first session, which was just a conversation to try and pinpoint what was the problem. Second point was proper hypnotherapy, and that was the one that fixed it. 2 sessions done, 12 years of suffering. When he was speaking to me, he's like, there's no way it worked in 2 sessions. I was like, that is the same mentality I had for 12 years. I doubted it for 12 years, and now I'm sorted. Like now, like I said earlier, I have to think quite hard about that situation to talk about it in order to get the details, because it's now like a distant memory. And it was all down to hypnotherapy. And if it wasn't for Dan reaching out, I would still be an absolute mess now.
Yeah. And you know, dude, I relate to that because the same issues, you know, my own issues that I had to deal with through the 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, they are like distant memories now. It's really hard to really, you know, speak about those with any conviction because they're not at the forefront of my mind. They're not plaguing me anymore. And, you know, what you're saying just rings so true for me. And I wish there was a better way. You know, they just denied last week here in the States, the FDA failed to reschedule MDMA for PTSD therapy, even though we've got numbers that show 65% of all veterans who participated in the studies now exhibit no signs of PTSD after MDMA assisted therapy. And it's like, we're ignoring this to line big corporations' pockets. And it pisses me off to no end because meanwhile, the people who gave the most to protect our country and do something, something bigger than themselves are killing themselves in droves because we care about the fucking bottom line.
Well, I'm not going to say the word, but the cause of the most recent lockdowns, 2 years of lockdowns, right? I've got massive opinions. I'll tell you about that another time because it'll probably get your bloody channel banned. But I'm not going to mention the words. But I honestly believe that media was used to drive fear, to get people to take that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I think, then was the cause of the variants.
I think, yes, I think so.
And I think that's probably where we are now.
Science kind of tells us that.
We're seeing now, even my sister, she's like, what is she, 36? Fully injected. My mum, fully injected. She's got cancer. My sister's having kidney issues. We're seeing like so many people now with health issues. They've got tumours, blood clots, kidney problems, kidney stones, heart attacks, inflammation of the heart. And we're seeing it everywhere. And all the time. So look how many multi-millionaires and billionaires were made during that time. They were all invested into the right companies. We know exactly. And that's what I think is going on with why these natural remedies and meditation and hypnotherapy, I think this is why it's not a big topic, because it affects the bottom line, their profits. You know, like look at these people who talk about natural foods to heal. They get silenced, boom, straight away. You come out, there's the lady Barbara O'Neill. She talks about a lot of health remedies and all sorts of stuff. And she has to put a lot of work in to make sure that gets public. Otherwise, she keeps getting silenced. You know, it's the same with the stuff that we're talking about now. You know, the reason is because the big corporations can't have it out there. They can't. I saw a video a couple of days ago, and it was by a doctor. They'd done some testing on cancer, and they're saying that cancer has a massive impact. There's a frequency between 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz that kills cancer. And they had tested this and they had videoed it. And when the cancer had tried to duplicate, the duplication, or, you know, they multiply, don't they, essentially? When it multiplied, the multiplied cancer dies and the other one just implodes, gone, with these frequencies.
See ya, bitch.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
So cancer, the healing for cancer is already here. We know it's here, but they won't let it out because they need the medication, the chemotherapy. They need all these people that are sick, and they do it through the food industry by feeding you chemicals and tell you to eat this food and don't eat this food. Red meat's going to cause cancer. No, it's not.
Bro, I survive on. I'm a meat and potatoes kid. I got a lot of food trauma from growing up. And that was a lot of what I had to deal with. And I'm a super picky eater with good reason. We can get into that later, not here. But I pretty much the definition of a meat and potatoes guy my whole life. And I'm fine. I fast, which, for those that don't know, a lot of cool shit happens when you fast. Like when you start burning fat for fuel, the byproduct of that is embryonic like stem cells that can go repair any damaged cell in your body. There's a really cool Netflix documentary that we talked about. 2 Australian guys go do a 40-day fast, 20 days water only, and then 20 days juice. And, one guy cured colon cancer with it. Another woman cured HIV, not HIV, but hepatitis C with it. It's completely doesn't exist in them anymore. Not even in remission, just no trace of cancer or hepatitis C. So, yeah, man, it's sad that that's where we're at. So it takes people like you and I to just continue to grind this out. And Barbara O'Neill and others in the space, I think it's only a matter of time before, the big pharma kind of loses their grip on it because too many people are out there speaking about it now.
People are waking up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Since we've been talking about the bottom line, I want to talk because I believe that really the path back to purpose for veterans is truly entrepreneurship. I believe that for a lot of reasons, mainly because it still gives you the ability to serve something bigger than yourself, which is my theory on why everyone who has ever served their country serves. I know they say it's for a lot of different reasons, but I think at the end of the day, we're all the same creatures, right? We're all human beings, and we all have this innate instinct to serve and help others and serve something bigger than ourselves. So, why is entrepreneurship the route that you're ultimately going? And why did you start the design business? Not because you wanted to be a designer, but you could have done that at a corporation or somewhere else. Why entrepreneurship for you?
To be honest, I don't like having somebody to answer to anymore. I didn't mind it in the military. I'd take orders all day, every day. I don't like it anymore. I don't like having to ask permission to have leave. If my daughter's sick, I want to be able to just drop everything. I've got a team under me now of designers, and they don't live in UK. They live in other countries. But I pay them extremely well. And my team is, from what I can see, one of the best teams on LinkedIn for design, especially for what we do.
Your stuff is beautiful, by the way.
I appreciate that, dude. But the thing is, where my designers live, I pay them a UK salary. Right now, Ben, one of my designers, Ben, the salary I send him is 5 times what a full-time nurse would earn in his country. 5 times. He's now able to afford a nice house, clear his debt, put his kids into the best education. They can go out and eat. If they want to eat out every night, they can. He's now got a maid that comes in and cleans because of what we pay him. So my business efforts now has a major impact on somebody else's life in a positive way. And I love that.
Yeah, it's such a good feeling, right? It makes you feel so good on the inside. It's almost selfish but in a good way.
Yeah. And if I was to pay that to someone in UK, it wouldn't really make a big dent on their life. It's just like you'd still be struggling financially. But to be able to send it to somebody else where it's actually making an impact, that's amazing. But I love managing my team. I love figuring out processes. I love figuring out business. I love the idea of having something that I could potentially scale. I love the variety of clients that we work with now because we deal with so many different industries with LinkedIn profiles and banners and branding and, like marketing content and stuff like that. We do a hell of a lot of stuff. But as we talked about earlier, I'm moving into the space of, I've been trading Forex, foreign exchange, for 12 years, and I'm going to start building a business off the back end of that as well. But with that, the idea will be eventually, if we can get the system up and running as it should, I will open a membership group for that and scale that business. But to military veterans, that will be free, completely free to veterans, because if it can help them financially build their life again, that would be my goal. And it's one of the goals with my own YouTube channel, eventually to build it into a place where I can have a cheap membership for military, Discord or wherever, but with that then you get perks of discounts to other shops and stuff, which would make the membership much cheaper than what the discounts outcome. And then once I scale that, then I can bring in people to do monthly diet plans, fitness plans, get a hypnotherapist who's in there full time and pay them full time salary to bring them in and just say, right, you're looking after these veterans. So eventually I'll scale that to that point, and that will become a charity at some point, but it's just trying to get it off the ground. So that's kind of where I'm going with the YouTube channel as well. So I've got stuff in the pipeline and stuff going on and stuff in the plan, but it's taken a long ass time to implement it.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur takes time, right?
It's a
But
grind, man.
it's funny how it ends up working out, right? Like getting into entrepreneurship and starting just that first business, and as you learn and you grow, you meet other people, you get all these ideas for other businesses that you want to start, and then it just becomes this really fun game that you look forward to winning every day.
Yeah, that's it.
It's so awesome, man. It's so awesome, dude.
The same as
So looking back at
the designer's life, if you can impact like 1,000 veterans or 10,000 veterans, and if you've got a group where you can say, right, these foods help, this alternative medication helps, this, this, and this, you've now got a place where you can voice without being banned. I think that's important.
No, for sure, man. It's absolutely important. And so, like, what advice do you have for veterans who are transitioning out of the military, considering entrepreneurship? And based on your experiences, what do you think the best advice for them would be?
If you're looking to leave the military, I would start building a network way before you leave. That would be the first thing, because I didn't, and everybody presumes, most people presume when they come out of the military, they're just going to walk into a job. And I hate to say it, especially in UK, when you leave the military, nobody gives a shit. They don't care if you've done 10 years, 15 years, they don't care. So wearing that, I was in the military for 15, 20, 30 years is not a badge of honor anymore. It's just like, they don't care. So you need to build the network of people that you could potentially build relationships with, grow that network, and then you'll be able to walk into a job probably without even needing to show a CV or resume. So I would always say, build that online network first, way before leaving.
Dude, and that's such a powerful point, man, because I tell all of the people that interact with me and ask me for advice the same thing. As I'm growing my network, I realize that statement that you hear so much when you start reading things like Think and Grow Rich, or any other of those business books out there. They all talk about your network as your net worth. And man, it's so true, because building a network opens so many doors for you, doors that I never thought would be open for myself. I'm just blowing them bitches off the hinges now, because I'm making genuine connections with real people. And it's kind of fun, man. It's a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah. Another thing we talk about as well is building a personal brand online.
Yeah.
If you want to be working in a particular industry, you want to be connecting with all those people in that industry, people who are decision makers at companies, people who work at the company, who are kind of on your level of you leaving the military, because people even at the bottom, they know people at the top. So don't just presume that because they're a receptionist, they don't know anybody who, the receptionist talks to everybody that comes through that door.
For sure. I'm with you, man. So given all of that, what do you think is the most significant mindset shift that veterans need to have when they come out going into entrepreneurship?
Play the long game. 100% play the long game, because I can tell you now, you ain't building a business in 1 month. No way. No chance. Like, I've been doing
fuck you YouTube gurus. You can't make $10,000 a month in 30 days and sustain it. There are outliers that can make that happen, but 2 to 5 years is what I tell everybody.
It's very, very rare that you will. There are people that have done it, You know, I know there's a guy online called Daniel Priestley, and he makes multi-million-pound companies within 12 months. But he is a serial entrepreneur, and there's very, very few people that can do that. You know,
Well,
so
and he's probably, I mean, if he's a serial entrepreneur like that, cranking out companies every year, he's got plenty of practice. He's got the roadmap and the
yeah,
knowledge. The
and the
reality of the
resources and
situation
contact.
is, right, exactly. And the reality of the situation is somebody like you and I, just fresh out of the Army or the Navy, we don't have a fucking clue. And we have to go learn all of those skills and fail a bunch of times to learn lessons that you can only learn by failing, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I love that, man. Dude, you've got some ambitious goals for the next few years. You want to scale your business, improve your fitness, do a tough mutter. So, what does the next few years look like for you? Just continue to grind?
Yeah. So, LinkedIn itself became a bit of a challenge for me recently because I was getting really tired, burnt out. I nearly left LinkedIn to focus purely on the trading. But I changed my approach a little bit now. So I've lowered my offer online from doing full profiles into mainly design because I can process design much faster and smoother and a lot less stress. So I'm probably going to try to scale that, but instead of trying to find individual clients every week, I'm now trying to find clients who have ongoing clients. So I need to find like 15 of them, and I can have like 30, 40 orders a month come in. So that's my thing I'm trying to do at the moment, and that will then give me financial stability to really get grinding on the rest because my team will probably process most of the orders by that point. So yeah, it's just grinding, dude, grinding.
And that's what it is, man. I think if I was to ask you what the biggest takeaway that you want them to get from our conversation, it's just keep grinding. Don't stop grinding, right? Like
The minute you give up,
you
you've
just have,
lost.
right. Yeah.
Like I
That's
said,
it.
I've been doing Forex for 12 years, dude. 12 years. I've only became profitable like year 10, and then I lost it. Well, year 9, I became profitable. Then I lost it when we had our daughter. It took me another 3 years to get my head back in the game.
Yeah.
So
Man. Yeah, you do. As soon as you decide to quit, you lose everything and you start back at square one. And it's just, whether you know it or not, everything that you do in that daily grind matters, and it moves you closer to where you want to be. It may not feel like it, but it sure as shit is the truth, at least
yeah,
in my experience.
yeah. So yeah, like I always say, play the long game. Like network before you come out. Like if you put your notice in, like with us, it's 12 months notice. You've got a year to build a network. If you've got to get very clear on, if you're looking for a job, you got to get clear on where you want to work because you want to connect with the right people. If you want to build a business, I would start building a business before you come out and start looking at right, who are your target audience, and within that year, you could probably connect to 2,000 to 3,000 ideal clients who could potentially be clients for when you come out. So as soon as you start that business outside, you got all that target audience. Like 17,000 followers on LinkedIn. There's probably 500 of those who are relevant to my business.
Right.
So make it very, very specific who you're targeting.
Well, and that all goes into the personal brand building too, right? Like knowing what your offer is going to be, or at least having an idea of it. So then you can start building that network of qualified buyers, targeted, instead of, building just this blanket following who, like you said, of 500 are probably your target client.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important. Like I said, I came out of the military. I didn't prepare, and I came out. I was like, oh shit.
Same here, man. Same story, dude. I didn't know. I started on LinkedIn in November of last year with 92 followers. I'm over 3,700 this week, I think. So, I figured it out, but man, it would have been far less painful if I would have started doing it, when that solid leader who told me I needed to set up a LinkedIn and start networking, if I would have just listened to him, it could have made things a lot easier. Man, I love it, Darren, dude. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in your design services, or they want to follow your journey with the Forex trading stuff that you got going on, or they just want to reach out to you because you're an awesome dude to talk to.
Cheers, man. Yeah. So if you want to get on LinkedIn, it's just Darren Palatina. So you'll find me. I'm the only one on there with that name. If you want to find me on YouTube for the podcast, it's Decision of Power. And then if you want to find me for the trading, it's my FX Room.
Man, that's it. Dude, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I know it's late for you there. Dude, I really super grateful to have you as our first UK guest on the show. Even though there's really no difference, we both served our countries. We both go through the same struggles when we get out, and we're both building businesses on the side. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, man. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks, dude. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, dude. Thanks. It's been nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, man. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, download, whatever you need to do. Share this with everybody. Help me achieve my goal of getting this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025. It's a lofty goal, but there's 19.6 million veterans in the United States, and I have no idea how many worldwide. So if there's one community that can help me accomplish this goal, it's definitely the veteran community. And I promise you, I'm a real human who will talk to every single one of you. I genuinely just want to save veteran lives because we need to stop killing ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, Darren Palatina. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.